My background is actually in pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist by training. Many moons ago, I worked in industry first. So I worked for a company now called GSK in the UK. And I went into retail and actually started my entrepreneurial journey there. I owned a couple of pharmacies in Calgary, Alberta. And that's really how I kind of got into entrepreneurship.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Market Makers, the leading podcast for African business leaders. Each week, we will be exploring the strategies, the stories, and the bold ideas that are shaping the future of African markets.
Welcome to Market Makers with your host, Alexander Adam, the podcast where we speak to business leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators who are shaping industries and making an impact. Whether you're just starting out or in executive leadership, you'll hear stories and strategies that can inspire your own journey in business.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Market Makers podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies of extraordinary leaders who are driving innovation and impact. Today, I'm very thrilled to have Jadesola, who is the CEO of STEM Mets, with us. STEM Mets is transforming STEM education for children aged 3 to 13 years old, fostering creativity, curiosity, and the joy of learning under the very powerful mantra, learn today, lead tomorrow. Welcome to the show, Jadesola. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Right. So let's just dive deep and go straight into it. Let's start with your journey, Jadesola. What inspired you to create STEM Mets, and what has been the driving force behind your mission at STEM education for children?
Yeah, the driving force ultimately was really my children. So I lived in Canada the last 11 years until 2010. And my husband and I came back to Nigeria in 2010 with our experience, education, etc. And the idea was that we were coming back for nation building. Nigeria formed a fundamental part of our lives in our education journey. And so we were very keen for our children to come home, know our culture. So, of course, when we came back home, though, we found that the education system really hadn't moved with the times. They were still doing things. When I was maybe 10 years old, it really didn't align with modern curricula. I was still stemmed in that cram and regurgitate method of learning and teaching. And my son really struggled, so he went from a child who was always a keen reader, a keen learner, to one who really just wasn't interested in learning. And I could see emotionally, socially, academically, he was just dwindling. And so, of course, as a mother, I'm a Nigerian mother at that, I started to research what are some of the, knowing his personality and ways that he likes to learn, what are some of the more modern ways and also creative ways of learning and teaching. And so I came across the concept of STEM education, a more hands-on approach to learning. And, for me, this was the thing. My son was really into Lego. He was one of those kids that likes to build, to make things. And of course, growing up in Canada as well, we always made sure they went to a variety of different camps. So from arts to engineering to football to whatever. So there was a lot of sort of outside of the school learning as well. So those first few years when we moved back from Canada, we would always either go back to Canada or North America for them to just go to camp. And I remember one of the craziest ones, we went all the way to California, to Stanford, just for him to go to a coding or animation camp. And so it was on one of those trips that I came across a program, which was our flagship Bricks for Kids, where they used Lego to teach STEM. And I thought, this is fantastic. Everyone knows Lego as a toy. It's fun. The kids are actually learning and they're having fun while doing so. So essentially, that was the driving force. And that really goes to what we talk about, bringing the joy into learning, inspiring creativity and innovation, and just bringing up kids who love learning, in essence. So that was the driving force. It was born out of a personal need and pain point, in essence.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I would assume that you had a couple of challenges with setting this up. Mind if you share a bit of those challenges with us?
I think couple is an understatement. As you know,
Totally.
we are domiciled in Nigeria. We are in Africa, and Nigeria is not one of the easiest places to do business. But it's one of
Correct.
those that develops you as a leader, I like to say, because you yourself become innovative, you become creative, and you become resilient. The exact skills that we're trying to teach our children. And yes, it wasn't easy. Firstly, because the concept of what we were trying to do was different, right? It wasn't the norm. It wasn't a school, and it wasn't necessarily extracurricular activity of sorts. So it
Correct.
was difficult to even just sell the concept of what is STEM, in its essence, that it's interdisciplinary way of learning and teaching, engaging those four pillars. Well, there's A now: STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And fusing it all together, hands-on, it's experiential learning, and that you're developing not just knowledge skills, but soft skills. So I think for us, the challenge, first of all, was to help our schools, our parents, and the educational ecosystem in general to really understand what STEM education is. Secondly,
Correct. Correct.
the challenge we faced was really in terms of workforce, right? Because really what we found out in this as well is that even our current workforce, the graduates of this university, they've been to school, but they actually haven't really learned. So what we were trying to do is bridge the learning gap using creative and innovative tools. So the workforce that we were recruiting to come alongside us to make this a reality, that was also a challenge because a lot
Correct.
of our graduates didn't have the relevant 21st century workplace skills. So we had to upskill and reskill those we were recruiting, retrain them, and even try and retrain the mindset, right? For them also to become innovative thinkers, for them to become problem solvers. So that
Correct.
in itself was a challenge, getting the right workforce to come alongside us with this revolutionary way of challenging the educational system. So I would say workforce was difficult. And I would say initially, even just trying to convince our stakeholders that this was a thing, this is a new thing that makes sense in terms of what our children in Nigeria and Africa as a whole should be experiencing. So I would say those are the two, big things at the
Major things.
start. Yes, at the start. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Let us talk about accessibility. So when the average Nigerian hears STEM education, especially for children, they think it's
Mm,
something that is above their pay grade or it's so
mm,
expensive. I can't afford
mm.
this for my kids. So what are you doing to make sure that this is accessible, especially for inner city kids and all the kids who are sort of underprivileged, because they do
Mhm.
need this as well. So is there something that you're currently doing to make sure that both in terms of access and affordability for STEM
Mm.
education for these kids?
Yes, and to be honest, that has been our intention for the start, that this has to be inclusive, it has to be diverse. And if you think about it, our children who are in private schools are actually a minority in the scheme of things. If you look at the numbers, majority of our children in Nigeria go to public schools or low
Correct.
resource private schools. That's another classification or in the education ecosystem. And so for us, that has always been important to us. And so we've always approached this in two ways: partnering with corporates and coming alongside them as an implementing partner to really address their own sustainability requirements. So CSR projects. So we've had a
Correct.
number of partnerships with corporates in Nigeria who also understand that they have to invest in the workforce of tomorrow to sustain their
True.
own companies. So, for example,
True.
we've had this long-standing partnership with AG Leventis, where we partner with them to run our programs in some of the Lagos State schools in their vicinity, in their areas. So that's sort of the employee or employer engagement partnerships that we've done. We've had partnerships with other banks and really corporates who are really investing in the future of tomorrow through the children.
Correct.
I think in the last few years, our partnership with Airbus Foundation, the plane manufacturer, has actually been pivotal in us taking our programs to low resource school. So because it's a grant-funded workshop, we've actually partnered with them and run the aerospace and aeronautics, robotics and coding programs in public schools. So to date, we've probably done about 4,000 children across Lagos, Ogun State, Ondo State, and even during COVID, we did it virtually with girls in Bauchi states. So we've been able to touch on, children from those communities as
Correct.
our way of ensuring inclusivity.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. You mentioned about a private sector participation. I didn't hear you mention anything on the public sector and how government is playing a role in this. Is there any impact or are you taking this program and this initiative to the government, and are they supporting in any way?
Well, of course, government is the biggest buyer, right? And, in terms of access to the learners, they have the biggest population of
Correct.
the students that we're trying to reach. So, of course, we have done that in varying extents in the last 10 years of our existence. But I think if I have to say, Lagos State have really, acknowledged the importance of STEM education in the public school curriculum, and they've had a number of initiatives over the years. Last year or 2 years ago, they actually set up a grant for STEM practitioners like myself. So STEM is almost mainstream in Nigeria now. There's so many of us that are doing, which I think is fantastic because there's an awareness
Correct.
and consciousness of what it is. So they actually had a grant application for people in STEM education, and we were recipients of that. And so we trained some Lagos State teachers, because really the quality of your education is only as good as your quality of your teachers, right? So for us,
Correct.
it's a two-pronged approach. We're training our children, but we're also training our teachers. So I would say in that way, there has been some government support. I wish it was on a national level, though, because depending on where you go in Nigeria, and depending on the governor and their outlook or the commissioner of education, that's the extent to which the children get exposed. But on our own side, we also play an advocacy role. So 4 years ago, we started doing these STEM festival. So 1-day learning festival, all things under STEM. We bring in other STEM practitioners to participate. So we have exhibitions, master classes, etc. So we've been doing in fact, our first event, we had over 6,000 people attend, which was overwhelming. So we do it in Lagos. This last year, we did it in Abuja. And so for us, the idea is to be able to replicate that across our nation and just bring attention to STEM education and the importance of doing so. We were lucky enough to partner with a major sponsor. And we've actually done this program in 8 other African countries in the last 4 years.
Wonderful.
So we've done Kenya, Rwanda, we did Zambia, Sierra Leone, the Gambia. But it's now an annual event in our education calendar. And that's our way of pushing advocacy to make STEM education mainstream, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa.
Correct. That makes a lot of sense. Tell us a bit about yourself, Jadesola. Did you grow up thinking that you were going to be this champion for STEM education?
Well, of course, the answer is a big no. So my background is actually in pharmacy. I'm a pharmacist by training. I studied pharmacy many, many moons ago. I worked in industry first. So I worked for a company now called GSK in the UK. And from the UK, I moved to Canada. And of course, the province I was in wasn't a sort of pharma-driven area.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't actually go back into practicing in industry. So I went into retail and actually started my entrepreneurial journey there. I owned a couple of pharmacies in Calgary, Alberta, and that's really how I kind of got into entrepreneurship. It was a great experience, learning and really transferring skills that I'd learned as an employee at GSK and applying some of that in the entrepreneurial concept. So I guess I'd really always been in the science field, but from a different angle. I was a practitioner as opposed to an educator, science educator, which I now evolved into. No, I think I probably saw myself as, a practitioner as opposed to an educator. So I suppose I'd become a teacher of science, which still keeps me, in that sector.
Oh, great stuff. So I have a 7-year-old who says he wants to be a space scientist, right? And for many other parents, just like me, who have kids at that age who actually want to go into science and STEM, what would you advise that they do to better encourage them? Because sometimes I'm at a loss as to how do I encourage him? He recently had his 7th birthday and we used a it's called Idea Lab. We used a science themed birthday
Mm-hmm.
for him, which he was really excited around.
You
But,
know.
just generally for parents who already have kids who are interested in this, how do you nurture this? How do you make them, grow in this?
Mm.
Hi, so Jadesola, I was asking that I'm the father of a 7-year-old who's really interested in science. In fact, he tells me he wants to be a space scientist. For other parents who have kids who are already interested in STEM, how do you think, or what advice would you give those parents in terms of how they should nurture and grow that interest that the kids already have in STEM?
Well, I think firstly is to pay attention, actually, to be able to identify their interests or areas of interest. And once you've done that, ensuring that you are engaging them in, programs or activities where they can develop and nurture those skills. So it could be, holiday camps, summer camps, after school clubs, after school programs, ensuring that they are nurturing those skills and developing those skills. And even, resources at home. So it could be some STEM toys or
Correct.
activities that they can engage with. We all know Lego. Just anything that helps them build, especially at that critical age where, the brain is still developing. It's a sponge. And really, you have a narrow window in terms of, some of those neural pathways and,
Correct.
are developing. And so that's the time to feed, them, with the correct exposure and experiences. So science museums, the zoo, birthday parties, STEM themed,
Correct.
etc. There are a lot of free resources online as well, because I know some of these STEM tools or kits are not cheap.
Correct.
So I think it's just really allocating the time and efforts to develop those interests. That's what I would say.
Awesome
And
stuff.
just finding the best organization locally for them to consistently engage in.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. All right. In terms of just your feedback, what kinds of feedback have you gotten from parents who've enrolled their kids in the STEM education? And is there a way that you're currently measuring the impact of the program and how that impacts is sort of translating into real world, success and outcomes for these kids?
Yeah, sure. I think for us, the ultimate success impact measurement for us is, the number of kids who go on to well, firstly choose STEM careers or
Correct.
university. I think for us, that's the ultimate matrix. And we have a number of alumni who have come from over the years who are either graduating or have graduated, because we've been doing this for 10 years. We're celebrating our 10th year. So we have some of our children who came to us at, 6 or 7, who, and some who came to us as older kids who are either in their first, second year university. And we have a number of them who have actually graduated. So from the impact matrix, that's our ultimate, and we have a number of those. Otherwise, for the programs that we do, for example, after school clubs, we have our assessment matrix as well that we measure, so we do a baseline before the program starts. And then throughout the programs, there's certain assessment matrix that we've put in place there to ensure that certain skills are being developed and that the children are actually being transformed either by way of some summative or formative assessments that we do along the way. Because that's important to us as well, right? That
Correct.
we're just not doing this for fun, but that we're actually seeing the skills being developed and lives transformed. So that's embedded in all that we do in terms of measuring impact. So I know to date, we've actually had about 30,000 learners go through our programs in terms of children. We've trained almost 600 teachers as well. And sort of impact strategy over the next 10 years is to ensure that we reach a minimum of 5 to 10,000 children every year. And also reaching about 2,000 teachers everywhere. So we've set those targets for ourselves. And we're just not interested in hitting the numbers. As I said, those assessments are being intentionally and consciously also embedded in our programs.
So I was going to ask you what's next for STEM, and I think you've answered a bit of that. But if we could sort of broaden that to see the entire African continent, do you have any plans to expand? This could be through probably a franchise model or whatever, but how do you think you want to expand into the entire continent with this?
Well, I think firstly for us, from a national perspective, so let's charity begins at home, right?
Correct.
So for us, our vision over the next 10 years is, by God's grace, next year for us to establish the first STEM makerspace lab in Nigeria, a center of, science and innovation, because we don't have science museums, right?
Correct.
So it's supposed to be a workspace for children, exposing them to cutting edge, emerging technology and STEM programs. One of our unique value propositions is that 100% of the programs we run are actually through partnerships with international and global STEM programs, that are evidence-based, tried and tested programs. So our mindset is that we're bringing the best of the world to our children here in Nigeria, that you don't have to jump on a plane like my kids used to go to Canada or California for you to be engaged. So for us, having that location, a community hub for children to come and tinker, is priority for us in the next 12 months at a minimum. And so our dream would be to have those STEM labs nationally through different partnerships and even the government. So there are a lot of empty buildings and that are scattered all over our nation, and see how we can further develop B2G. I think in terms of expanding, I think we've sort of already started that through co-organizing this STEM festival across Africa. And we feel that, our superpower is collaboration through impact, impact through collaboration. And so we continue to identify STEM partners in those countries and see how we can replicate what we're doing here in Nigeria. And I think thirdly, obviously the biggest way to scale is the use of technology. And so one of those things that we are also developing is our social app, where we would have nuggets of micro-learning STEM programs that you can access on your phone, be it iOS or Android. And that way, even a child in a village, as we know, the internet penetration and phone penetration in Africa is huge. So even my cousin in my village has at least an Android phone, that these children are also able to digest, STEM programs that we are planning to record and have on our social app. So those are sort of the three-pronged approach that we're looking at, and just trying to drive and use technology to be able to extend the reach of our programs.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for that. So we're coming to the end of the podcast. This is my favorite part of the podcast, actually. It's called the rapid fire segment. I'll ask you quick questions and you answer with the first thoughts that comes into your mind. Ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So what's your favorite STEM concept to teach kids?
Science experiments.
All right. What's the one book you think that every educator should actually read?
The Anxious Generation.
How do you stay creative?
Always learning. I think I have an overactive imagination, and so I learn in different ways, but usually through experiences.
What's the one advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Keep learning.
What's your favorite childhood toy or activity that helped you spark curiosity?
Play.
All right. So STEM or arts, do you believe one is more important, or should they always be integrated?
Integrated. That's why we have STEAM now.
Correct. One word to describe the future of education.
One word. That's a tough one. Future of education, mind-blowing. Is that one word?
It counts. It does count as one word. All right. So that's the end of the rapid fire segment. It's really been an enlightening conversation, Jadesola. Before I let you go, I do ask a couple of just final questions. One is, in 2024, I would argue, though, that 2024 has been one of the most difficult years for businesses, in Nigeria and across Africa because of the economic turmoil. What lesson have you learned from 2024, and how are you going to take that lesson going forward into the next year?
Yeah. I said keep learning, and I think that has really helped us, because it's helped us to continue to be innovative. It's helped us to continue to evolve. And I would actually say 2024 for us was our best year. I think, as they say, is it desperation is the mother of invention or whatever? We really had to be innovative and we had to be fearless. So while, people were holding back, I believe, did the opposite. It was the time that we brought in newer programs. It was the time that we really had to be critical in the way we're thinking and be creative in our service offerings. And I think for us in this, our 10-year history, though it's been really difficult economically, for us, it's
Correct.
actually been our best year. As I said before, keep learning, keep being creative and innovative, and just really thinking ahead, always a step ahead. Don't be satisfied with the current status quo. 10 steps ahead and always looking to the future.
All right. So how will partners, parents, people across Africa who listen to this podcast, how do they reach out to STEM Meds if they want to either partner with you or are looking for bringing their kids over?
Yeah, as I said, collaboration for us is our superpower. So the partnership is not just with corporates. Our partnership is actually with our parents. We see it as a long-term relationship. As I told you, we have kids who are graduated or graduating. So yes, our website, stemmeds.com. We have a lot of information on there. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Either me personally and the company is also on there. And, you never know, look how we might be in your city next through our STEM festival. And that's our way of continuing to scale impact and reach as many children as possible. So head to our website, stemmeds.com, or on all the social media platforms, you'll find us there.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you again so much, Jadesola, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to Market Makers Podcast for more inspiring stories of game changers and innovators like Jadesola. Until next time, keep making an impact. Thank you so much.